This is Gloria Taylor Brown with a gathering of priestesses. This is our 35th edition, and we have with us tonight as a guest Theresa C. Dintino. Did I say that right, Teresa?
You did, yes.
Oh, I'm so proud of myself. I usually manage to mangle our guest names. And, of course, we have with us as well our beloved co-host, Catherine Ravenwood, better known as Raven. You can call her anything, just send her money. She's fine.
Okay.
Hey, you know, what can I say? Anyway, it's a gorgeous day in here in Oceanside, and we've been enjoying the weather. We were just discussing the fact that some places are having a lot colder weather than we are, and Teresa's up in Sebastopol, California, and they're expecting a storm tomorrow. Raven's in Albuquerque. They're having beautiful weather there, so we hope wherever you are, you're having absolutely glorious weather, getting exactly whatever it is you want, whether it be snow, rain, sleet, or storm. And anyway, tonight's the next to last show for this year. We will have one more show, and then I'm going to take a 2-week break, and then we'll start again in January with a whole new slew of guests and events, and so I'm really excited. We're going to be doing some different things in the new year. One of the things we want to do is we want to do some classes, Saturday classes. So one of the things I would like is I'd like some suggestions. What would you like to take a class on where you are getting an opportunity to study with a master? I mean, whether it's Raven teaching tarot or Teresa teaching, Teresa can teach so many things because she's a Strega, she's a writer, she's written several novels, you know, or working with me teaching shamanism, or we have so many of our great teachers here, and we're going to do some master classes. They're going to be very inexpensive. They will have a small charge, and I'd like to do them on Saturday mornings, you know, kind of like the old Saturday morning sequels where, you know, you went to the show and you ate popcorn and what have you. Well, instead of going to the show and watching popcorn, you can sit in front of your computer and listen to us and get some really good education. And we'll have some feedback. We'll also do some hot seats or individual programs where you will be able to be on the show with us. So it will be by application individuals who want to have, you know, for example, if we're doing Raven and her tarot readings, we will actually have somebody on there that she's doing a reading for. So you'll see exactly how that she does this and how she works this. And we will have the opportunity for you to be one of those people as a participant and participate live and make your comments and make yourself known. So that's going to be coming in the new year. In between now and then, of course, we have the great season of festivals that is better known as Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. What else have we got? New Year's. And by the way, I'm planning on bringing back Saturnalia. I haven't got it in order this year, but I think it would, you know, I like the idea of Saturnalia. During Saturnalia, which was an ancient Roman festival, women got to speak up to men. Servants got served before their masters. People gave gifts to each other. And there was lots of eating and talking, and on January 1st, of course, everything went back the way it was before, but all was forgiven. Whatever had happened during Saturnalia, nothing was held against you for the following year.
What happens in Saturnalia stays in Saturnalia?
Oh, got it. It's basically Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, yeah.
So I think we need a new festival. I mean, I'm not quite up on any of these, so let's see what we can do. So, Teresa, I want to welcome you tonight and thank you for being present with us and hanging out with us in this lead up to whatever it is holiday that you're currently celebrating. And I really enjoyed looking through your bio. You've got, now what is it, 3 novels. one nonfiction. You've got another two nonfiction books that'll be out next year. I believe you're doing some teaching up in the Northern California region. I looked at. I basically got tired looking at your bio because you've got so much going on, girl. I mean, you're just going to have to tell us about it, is what it is. So, Teresa, we're going to start tonight with a question we always start with, which is, what drew you on to the priestess path?
Well, I've been thinking about that since you told me you were going to ask me that question yesterday. First, I do want to thank you for having me on the show, and it's already so much fun that I'm really delighted to be here with you and Raven. And hello to everybody out there who's watching. So I've been thinking about that. There's several ways I could answer it, but I decided the way I would answer that tonight is to say what led me onto the priestess path was me really wanting to understand what that was. And the way that I got led to that is I was attempting to write a book about Lilith. And so this is my book about Lilith. It just was published this year. It took me 24 years to write, and it's the smallest book I've ever written. But I was visited by an owl, and I wanted to understand what that meant. And I discovered, Lilith through the owl. And through discovering Lilith, I discovered Maria Gimbutas's work, which just opened my whole world up. And I'll never forget the day I was standing in the library in Keene State College. That's the town that I grew up in. So I used to always borrow my sister's library card and go and look through their stacks. And I found the two books by Maria Gimbutas, and I thought, oh my goodness, it just felt like my life would never be the same, and in fact it wasn't. So I went on to try to write a book about Lilith, and when I was reading Riane Eisler's book, The Chalice and the Blade, she has a section in there where she's talking about priestesses in Crete. And I saw them, I had like I don't know, I guess maybe you'll call it a vision of these priestesses, and I felt them, and I just became completely captivated and wanted to understand, who they were.
Wow. Well, it's interesting. We all come onto this path in different ways, but I think along the way, most of us, Maria Gimbutas has been very much, as well as Riane Eisler. I had the privilege of driving Riane Eisler whenever she was a speaker at the Women of Wisdom Foundation, and when you're driving somebody and you're not wanting to screw up, I remember being very self-conscious of the fact that I was in the car with someone who I regarded as this huge luminary in the women's spirituality program, and I didn't want to make an idiot of myself. So before I was going to drive her, I tried to reread her book really quickly, And then I quoted something and said it was from her book, and it turned out it was from Maria Gimbutas's book, which she very politely informed me. And I started picking my teeth and said, "Ooh, I still put my foot in my mouth." For years, the only time I've ever managed to get my foot out of my mouth is when I'm taking it out to put the other one in. So, it was fun, it was interesting, and she's quite a lady. So that was about 24 years ago?
Yeah, so I was attempting to write a nonfiction book about Lilith, but when I got halfway, so then I had this experience reading Riane's book, and that is when it flipped over into a novel. Okay, did something happen? Are we okay?
No, you're fine.
Okay, it flipped over into a novel, and that was my first novel, Ode to Minoa, which is the story of a priestess in Bronze Age Crete, and she's a snake priestess. And I will hold this book up. So this was my first novel, And it was written, really, you know, all of my novels I write to try to understand something. That's the way I can understand things, is to research them and then write about them. And when I'm writing about them is when I can really feel them. And I always like to say I can't understand anything until I can really feel it in my body. So I wrote this novel about this priestess. This first one is kind of a coming-of-age novel of a young girl who's chosen to be a snake priestess and her journey in becoming that. But she becomes a prophetess of darkness, and she has a series of visions where she sees the future of women, which is our history. And she tries to make sense of it from her perspective, which it's just confounding to her what she's seeing from the point of view of being in a woman-centered culture.
Yeah, I wonder, you know, that's an interesting idea. I haven't read your book yet, but I will have to read it, because I've often wondered, you know, if they could see forward to where we ended up. You know, basically a lot of the particularly in Crete, they were basically equal. And, you know, a lot of the priestesses were as important as the male priest. There was, you know, there wasn't that up and down that you have in most cultures today, or in most cultures for the last 2,000 years. So, and Crete is fascinating to me. In fact, one of the things I'm trying to arrange is for Carol Christ, who lives in Crete, to be on the show. And we're having a little bit of a time difference issue. 7 hours difference depending on when it is. So, have you been to Crete?
I actually have not been to Crete, which totally surprises me. Yeah, no, I haven't been to Crete yet.
Well, we have to go there.
Yes.
We'll just organize a trip around your book, and then we'll go and experience it. Don't you think?
That'll be great. It's nice to have it in my future still.
Yeah. So, having put this together and looking at this, and obviously you had to do quite a bit of historical research. Were you studying history at that time, or you said you were in college? So what were you studying?
Oh, I wasn't in college.
Oh,
it was after college. I was in my 30s when I wrote this book. Yeah, it was after I had my daughter. So I was a writer before I, you know, found the goddess, I guess you might say, through Lilith and Maria Gimbutas. But then I started going down this path to you know, to becoming a devotee of the goddess and writing about priestesses. And I just did all my own independent research. I love to do research, and I just, you know, let myself be led to wherever it seemed I needed to go. So I did a lot of reading and taking notes, and it took me about 5 years to write the book.
Really? So that was the first book. That's the Ode to Minoa, right?
Yes.
So you started out, you're going to write a book about Lilith. The next thing you know, you're writing a book about the Minoan culture and a forward. And then how many years later did the book of Lilith come along?
Oh, the book Lilith only came out this year.
So 24 years. So all you people out there who feel bad about the fact you've got a book that you plan to start writing and you haven't got it done, just keep writing, okay? 24 years later, you know,
yeah,
maybe you'll get it out.
Everything has its time. After Ode to Minoa, I went on to write Stories They Told Me, which is the sequel to Ode to Minoa.
Mm-hmm.
And in Ode to Minoa, you know, so Ode to Minoa was, from my point of view, what happened to women with the loss of the goddess. And that's how I see it. In the book, it's called The Murder of the Goddess, you know, because it's just so devastating what happens on the planet with the loss of this consciousness, according to my belief. And so when I finished that book, I wanted to know what happened to men with the loss of the goddess and how that affected them. And so I went on to write Stories They Told Me, which looks at that whole issue. So it tries to, when I was writing Ode to Minoa, so every time I set out to write a book about a strong female character, a male character shows up, and I try really hard to convince him to go away for a long time. You're not welcome here, go away, this book's about a woman. But, but they're always like, no, I need to be here. And they get sometimes half of the book. So that's what happened in Ode to Minoa. A male character appeared, and in stories they told me, it's their relationship. His name is Danelle, and her name is Aurelia. It's through their relationship, which is in a pre-patriarchal culture, that we get to look at what happened to men and women, the polarization that happened after this loss of the goddess.
Hmm.
And so stories they told me is different than Ode to Minoa. It goes more into shamanism and time travel, and they both get to look at the future of what happens to men.
Hmm. So, having looked at this from that direction and starting so long ago and now coming forward, how did it inform your life?
How did writing those books inform my life?
Yes.
Well, for a long time I was really sad, and there was a lot of grief over this loss, what I felt was a great loss, and I longed to live in this kind of a culture again. And so I would say for a little while it really made me sad, but then I just kept going and hoping that someday this will be returned, and kind of dedicated my life to try to bring this consciousness back in some form to the present. So I would say that's how.
Okay, so as you moved forward in creating your career, did it also affect what you chose as a career?
Well, the career was the writing. But what went on to happen is I ended up, okay, so then after I'd finished these two books, I was at a Sunday dinner at my parents' house. They're a large Italian-American family, so there's always a big Sunday dinner. And my aunt, who I loved dearly, and I lost her this year, she pulled me aside and told me something she'd been telling me all my life, which was that my great-grandmother was a Strega, and that I needed to pay attention to this. And I'd heard it many times before. She had told me this many times. And I didn't ever really know fully what it meant, because the lineage of the Strega, which is an Italian wise woman, an Italian medicine woman, or the literal translation is witch, was lost in my family for a generation. And so, but on this day, I just suddenly decided I really got to listen to her. She's really trying to tell me something. And she said, you have to listen to me. She was a Strega. You need to know who your great-grandmother was. And so I set out to write another book to find out who my great-grandmother was. And that's when I wrote The Strega and the Dreamer.
Now, that is nonfiction, correct?
This is fiction. This is historical fiction based on the lives of my great-grandparents. So once again, I was setting out to write about my great-grandmother, the Strega, and my great-grandfather came in and got half the book. So it's about both of them. He's the dreamer. He had the dream of America, so he's the one who moved them here.
And what part of Italy was your family from?
We're from the Abruzzi. We're from a small village called Torre de Passeri in the Abruzzi region.
So sort of middle-ish to north Italy, is that correct?
Yeah, it's central Italy. It's right across from Rome on the Adriatic. Yeah. It's a beautiful area.
I was doing some research after we talked about it. I believe that one of the things it was a area where the Romans used to go during the summertime. It was celebrated as a apparently the water over there is cooler, than water over near Rome, and so they would get out of town, so to speak, to Abruzzi.
Oh, okay. I don't think I knew that. No.
And so there's apparently some, major villas that the Caesars had there, and there's strong storms that come off of what used to be Yugoslavia that keep it cooler over on that side, the Mistra. So anyway, I was just thinking it was interesting. I know we have a number of people here with Italian backgrounds, and you sort of want to find out where your friends are from. And I have a friend who lives in Sicily who she's from New York, but she chose as an adult to return home, which undoubtedly her great-grandfather is just rolling in his grave over the whole issue. He fought so hard to be here, and
yeah, it wasn't easy for them at all. No.
But as you began to study the Strega, the stories, did you find that there was a depth of knowledge there that was innate in yourself? In other words, was memories coming back up, so to speak?
Well, it was very intriguing because I'd written these 2 books about a priestess, diviner, actually, in Crete, and then I realized I had my own lineage, and it was kind of like waking up from amnesia, because it was like, wait a minute, I have my own lineage. I don't have to. I was born into it. So yeah, it's definitely, it all just started to come alive in me, and yet still, when I wrote the book, I really dug around to try to find information. It's not easy to find information about Strega, that's the plural of the word. It's, and I don't read Italian, so it was difficult, but anyway, I found enough to use my imagination, and I really connected with my great-grandmother. And what happened is, this is where the story gets really wild. What happened is that after I finished the book, I took 8 years to write that book. And I missed her so much after I finished the book that I went on a shamanic journey to look for her, because I just wanted to find her. And I found her. I found her in this cave. It seemed like it was in the rainforest in the Amazon. And she was crafting something, and she said she was going to start to teach me. So I started to be mentored from my great-grandmother in the other world. And it was a few years that was going on, where I was going on journeys, and she was teaching me, and I was, at that point, I had already started working with the trees, so she was teaching me through the trees as well, which I've come to find out is a huge part of the Strega lineage. So everything has kind of come to me in such an organic way. That's what's so delightful about it. So then eventually I was led to have a divination in a West African tradition. And in that divination I was told by the beings that the diviner was speaking with that I could be a diviner. And I was kind of shocked, and very confused, because it's a West African tradition, and I'm Italian, and I'm a goddess woman, and so I couldn't really see how this could possibly fit into the trajectory of my life. But my great-grandmother came up in that divination, and the trees. And so it became really clear that my great-grandmother led me to get a real-time teaching, and to get a technology, and to get back the art of divination in order to reclaim my own lineage. And so that's what happened.
So tell us more about what you mean about being a diviner.
The kind of divination I do is called stick divination, which I believe is tree medicine. And in this form of divination, you are merged with an elemental being. That is how you can divine. And so I'm merged with elemental beings of the wild, who are called the Wedeme in the Dagara tradition. And so then I'm listening to them when I'm divining. But what I mean by divination is the ability to listen to beings from other dimensions, if you want to call them dimensions, or other worlds, or in the beyond, or spirit beings, and in order to help people understand how to more fully live their lives.
Okay, thank you.
So, Raven, I think since she's talking from the tree's point of view, that's a part I would like you to interview her on, because you are our resident tree priestess. So,
Well, one of them.
well, you're more than me. I'm more into rocks. So, Raven is a tree priestess. She's done quite a bit of work with working with the trees and doing. They did a opera. The opera was named.
Well, it was spiritual theater. It wasn't opera.
Oh, all right. Well,
Theater called In Honor of Trees that Starfeather wrote.
Yeah. Okay.
There are a lot of us that contributed songs and stories to that, and we. I was telling Teresa about it earlier. We performed it a lot in Seattle, and people really liked it. And it was just stories honoring trees and songs people had received, and somewhere tucked in away somewhere, I have a copy of all of that stuff, and I should get it out and put it all together again. I have notes.
Good for you. So
when you work with trees, what kind of tree what kind of branch stick do you use for your divination? What tree gives that to you?
My stick is from a buckeye tree.
A buckeye?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Which is very fascinating.
Do they grow where you are now, or did you bring them from the East Coast with you?
The stick I got when I became a diviner, so that was given to me by my then mentor when I became, so it was from here. But the interesting thing is that the stick is from a buckeye tree, which is a form of chestnut, right? And I wasn't familiar with buckeyes because I grew up on the East Coast, but I think they're gorgeous, and I'm just getting to know them. But what happened is about a little more than a year ago, the aunt that I was speaking to you about, the one that kept the lineage, even though she couldn't fully embody it in her lifetime, she's the one who kept it and reminded me of it, and it's because of her that I even know about the Strega lineage. And my great-grandmother, she was being moved into a healthcare facility, for people that needed assistance because of her age. And my mother cleaned out her apartment. And when I was leaving from a visit home, my mother said she had something to give me. And she handed me something. It had a note from my aunt, which said that Nonna Condello, that's what she called her Nonna, her grandmother, carried this in her pocket for years and rubbed on it a lot like a worry stone. And then I looked, and it was a chestnut.
My grandfather had a lot of chestnuts, and he always told us they were good luck.
Oh. Well, I'm just so intrigued. Well, first of all, I've never had anything from my great-grandmother.
That's really powerful.
And it's a seed. So I don't know if you've read Martine Prechtel's recent book, but it's all about the seeds and saving the seeds and seeds of lineages. And also, it's a chestnut, and my stick is from a buckeye, so I thought that was extra.
So had your aunt read your books, or did she see this Estrega in you? Because she was part of the lineage too. Did she recognize it in you, or did she recognize it because she'd read your books? How did she know to pull you aside and tell you to connect?
Well, I wasn't the only one she pulled aside. She told us all. There were 6 of us. And it's a family lineage. In the Italian tradition, it's very much family-oriented. But yes, I believe she probably saw the lineage in me, and I think she saw it in most of us, though. Yeah. And she really didn't want it to die.
Yes. Excuse me, I forgot to plug in my computer. It's about to die. I have to get the cord.
So, anyway, as you've explored this, you know, 'cause the reason I wanted Raven's so connected to the trees. That's why I wanted her to talk about that. And she, okay, and as you've explored this, have your cousins, I presume either cousins or siblings who were told this as well, have they followed in the path?
Well, a lot of them are now coming along in the path. I mean, I don't want to speak for them, but because through the divination form that I was gifted. So see, it's all happening through divination.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, so I would say yes to that.
So are they connecting with your great-grandmother as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. And others.
Yeah. So when you connect with your great-grandmother and she brings forth this wisdom, does she bring others to visit with you and allow them to teach you as well?
Oh yeah, there's a whole slew of beings I work with now. Yes. Yes. Yeah, there's a lot, and a lot of them are grandmothers. There's a whole group of grandmothers that I work with. Yeah.
I love working with the grandmothers, so that's why I was wondering whether or not you were getting visitations from the others. There's what I find is that grandmother wisdom, it really doesn't matter what your lineage, I mean, what your culture is. It's almost like there's a thread of grandmother wisdom that runs through all grandmothers. I mean, whether, you know, if they could all speak a language that they could share, and of course once they go into spirit form, they can speak a language that they can all share. And you find that they have so much in common because a lot of it is just purely common sense.
Right, and being a grandmother, well, they seem really united to me. The grandmothers are very united. They don't seem to care at all what lineage you're from or what part of the world you're from. They're totally united, and I think they have a mission, and I'm on board with that. So we work together a lot. But a lot of people who come for divination, their grandmothers show up as well and want them to remember their own lineage. And I work with a lot of grandmothers in that way.
That's interesting. I actually had an experience the other day, and I realized that my grandmother was in my knee. And my grandmother had rheumatoid arthritis, and she had a great deal of trouble with her right knee. In fact, eventually ended up with 16 operations in it. And as I was having problems, and I am having problems with that knee, it suddenly dawned on me that it was my grandmother. And that I had spent years and years and years standing beside her, rubbing ointment onto that knee and helping her walk, and, you know, all the things that we had done whenever I was a child, and that somehow she was trying to communicate with me, and she was using that knee to get my attention. And I said, Grandma, I'm willing to listen to you, but I don't really want to have your knee. So we're working on that issue right now, as how I can not have Grandma's knee.
Where was your grandmother from?
My grandmother is an Irish gypsy, and she is the one who taught me palmistry and tarot reading because she felt I should have something to fall back on when I got older. And she lived down in northern Florida, and was quite a character, actually. So, and when I was very young, my great-grandmother also lived with us, and she was, I think, 96 whenever I was 6, and she was a very strong woman. Let's just put it that way. Mm-hmm. And had very strong opinions how children should be raised, most of which were not the way I was being raised. But as now, did you actually know your grandmother in this life?
My grandmother, yes, not my great-grandmother.
Not your great-grandmother. Okay.
So my great-grandmother's my main guide, I would
Mhm.
say, besides the Wedeme. But my grandmother I knew very well, and she was one of my favorite people ever. She still is one of my favorite people. Yeah. She was just so fun.
What is the term for great-grandmother in Italian?
I don't think I know. Sorry.
That's interesting to find out. Because a nonna is kind of grandma.
It's grandma.
Yeah, and I don't know what great-grandmother is. I'm a great-grandmother, and I'm a great-grandmother to some goats, and so we decided I'm a great-grand-nanny as well. So, Raven, did you have some questions you wanted to ask Teresa about her books or about her programs?
Well, I wondered are you self-published, or how are your books available? Are they through Llewellyn or?
My books are available through Amazon and on my websites.
Are you self-published, or do you have a publisher?
The first one had a publisher. The other three are self-published.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I wanted to ask you is how do you, when you connect with the trees, how do they talk to you? How do you get that information?
That's a good question. I know. A lot of people ask that. Well, I would say everyone speaks differently, and this is one of the books I'm actually currently writing is about my work with the trees. And I have many trees I work with, a lot of oak trees and a lot of redwood trees. Let's see, what else? The chestnut tree.
In the physical, or are you talking about working with them physically or in spirit?
Both.
Okay.
These are all embodied trees,
Okay.
and they're on different mountains and in different locations, so I go and visit them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say my main way of getting information is, let's see, I would say with images, visual images, but I also hear things, or I just feel something. But mostly it's, I would say, images for me.
So the trees give you this information?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they give me information. They talk to me. Currently, you know, I do a lot of work with the trees, so it's a lot about things they want me to do, work-wise. They want me to, you know, go do this ritual, or this place needs healing, go do that, or, you know, so there's a lot of lessons and teachings I'm getting from the trees. So, yeah, I guess it's not very clear. Maybe I should focus on one. There's one tree in particular that I'm writing two books right now. One is called Tree Code, but that's a working title. I don't know if it'll stick. And the subtitle is Teachings from the Trees. And so that's the story of several trees I've worked with and what the story has been like and what they've taught me. And each one is different. And so in that tree there's a grandmother oak that I work with, and she's right here in town. And she's like this amazing grandmother presence, and she taught me about being a mother. She taught me how to hold space. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what that chapter will be about. But then there's another whole book I'm writing, which is based on a tree that I call the Amazon tree. And that's a tree that gave me a very strong scolding when I met her, and it was quite, you know, shocking. And she asked me to change my pattern, and she told me she wanted the Amazon pattern. So that book is about my discovery to try to understand what she meant by that.
Interesting. So she wanted you to do some transforming for her, so that by you...
For the earth. Yeah, for the earth. I mean, I find they're all, you know, like the grandmothers, the trees are also working overtime to try to get, you know, things to change here on the planet, and to try to wake us up. That's what my feeling is, and to get the tree priestesses back online. I mean, I feel that they're working really hard for this purpose, and the tree priestesses you know, they hold the space in the community, and like the trees, they can listen to what's going on and try to bring healing where it's needed. And so the trees have so much to teach us about how to be a priestess, how to be a medicine person, and what that really means, and that it's something that's embedded in an ecosystem. It's not something that happens in a vacuum, just like the trees. We need to be aware of our whole ecosystem and care for it, you know, the water and the mountains and everything, and people, but there's other things that need tending to as well. So the trees have really taught me how to tend to my local ecosystem.
I think one thing that's so interesting about trees is how their roots are all interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And redwoods are famous for that. Aspens are famous for that, as are the mushroom people. The mycelium goes on forever, and they share information. And I just think that's so fascinating that they're standing there apparently doing nothing to the average person, and yet they're so busy and they have so much going on, and they're sharing all that information with each other, sharing nutrients with one another, and then they doing all of, you know, in my book I call them vertical rivers.
Vertical what?
Rivers.
Oh.
Because they're such transpirers of the water. And so to me, I was able to journey inside a tree, and it was a river inside the tree going up and down. And it was so amazing. And there's just so many memories in the trees. And I think they would love for us to learn their memories. But, you know, to me, trees are really slow. And I get pretty busy. And when I'm busy and zooming around, I'm not slow enough to hear them. So, yeah, I think that you have to sit down and take a little time with the trees.
Yes.
That connection with them.
Right. And keep going back.
Yeah.
And visiting and bring them gifts. And yes, you have to court them. That's how I see it.
There's a story of some ethnobotanists who were down in at the Amazon, and one was an older professor, and he had two young students who were with him, and one was talking about the trees, you know, basically as physical beings, and kind of, you know, the physical existence of it, and the other one was talking about them as living beings, as though, and the one who was talking about them as physical beings, he turned on the other one and he says, "You're talking about trees as though they're magical beings."
Yes, they are.
And the older professor stopped, and he turned around and he says, "The trees eat light. How more magical can you be?"
Wow.
And it totally transformed the one's understanding of trees. It was like, oh, these are magical beings.
They are magical beings.
They take, you know, water and light and transform them, and they get no other food. You know, the nutrients from the ground, some, but primarily their primary food is created by them with light. My grandson, when he was about 4 years old, my grandson's a very special person. It's not just because he's my grandson. We took him to a place up in Washington where there's a lot of really incredible trees, and he was sitting there with a tree, and he was touching the tree, and we said, "Well, it's time to go," and he says, "No," he says, "I can't leave yet." And I said, "Why not?" And he says, "The tree's telling me a story, and it's not done yet." And I said, "Okay, well, we're going to go sit over here and wait for the tree to stop telling you the story, so come on over whenever you're ready to leave." About 15 minutes later, he came over and he says, "Okay, we're done." I said, "Okay, so what story was the tree telling you?" He says, "Well, the story that the tree was telling me was about the Indians in their canoes who used to come by here, and how they used to go out and hunt the whales." And he said, "And then they were telling me the stories about the men who came in the big ships Now, at 4 years old, nobody had ever told that child about canoes, hunting whales, or men coming in big ships. And he knew details. I mean, he was telling us details that
The trees.
the trees knew,
Mm-hmm.
and they remembered. And he was willing to sit and listen to them tell the story, which is something, some of what Raven was saying, you know, the idea that you have to slow down enough in order to hear it. And I know that's true with rocks. If you want to hear the story a rock has got to tell, you got to really slow down, because they've been here a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And their trust issues are not real high. So you have to really establish a connection, and different rocks, different speeds. You know, you can talk with crystals at a very high, sometimes very quickly. But if you want to talk with granite, you better slow way down. So as you've explored all this, the tree wisdom, the wisdom of the Dega people of Africa, of the people of Italy, how has that manifested going forward? So are you teaching this information? Also, before I go any further, before you answer that, I apologize. Darla had a question. She wanted to have a simple guiding tip that you are comfortable sharing about connecting more deeply with tree beings.
Oh, okay. It's very simple. You just have to take time, and you know, find one that you feel connected to, and it might take, you know, a little time to find that tree. But once you find that tree, you begin to visit that tree. Like I said, like you begin to court that tree. You begin to visit the tree and sit by the tree with no expectation, but just to get to know the tree like you would a person. And you're listening to their story, like your grandson. They really want to tell their stories, and they've been holding them for a long time, and they really love it when people will listen. So if you just keep sitting there and bringing the tree gifts, you can bring some water or some milk. Eventually, the tree will begin to speak to you.
Lovely. So going back, as I was talking about, so bringing all this together now, we've got Crete, Lilith, Strega, history, Italian, trees. How does that all come together for you? Now, are you teaching a body of work, or is it simply going into your books?
Oh, well, it's so fascinating how it all comes together, because as I said before, once I became a diviner, I realized I'd written, my first 2 books were about a priestess diviner in Crete. And so it's all been this strange awakening to where I've been led without knowing where I was being led to. So now I'm a diviner, and I divine for a lot of people, and it's very exciting because you get to see things you never would be able to see because it's somebody else's material. It's not your material. And I'm learning so much about divination, which I believe is a lost art on the planet for women. And so I'm really dedicated in bringing that back. And I'm dedicated to bringing what I call women's medicine back to the planet. And divination is one of the ways that I believe we can do that. And so I'm working with a lot of people that are coming for divination, but also I'm mentoring some diviners. And just also trying to teach. I'm teaching a class starting in January called Elemental Earth Medicine, which is simply to try to help people remember how to connect to the planet, to their local ecosystem, and work in a spiritual way with their local ecosystem, which I feel there's a lot of need for that on the planet right now. And to me, it's all earth medicine. It's all the same medicine, and it's Gaia who wants it returned. That's the way I see it. So most of my work now is focused on that, focused on trying to return women's medicine to the planet, and trying to understand what that means. So I do group divinations with other women where we go and we just ask a question together. You know, what is this? What is that? What do you want to happen now? And we're just listening and doing lots of rituals. The kind of divination I do is called prescriptive divination, so you are given work in the divination to do. And that is in the form of rituals. So lots of rituals come out of the divination.
And you're going to be teaching these classes in January?
What's that?
You're going to be teaching these classes in January?
I'm starting the Introduction to Elemental Earth Medicine in January, yes. And I have a small class I'm teaching how to be diviners. But that's a small one.
Are you teaching that class online or in person?
Both of them are in person. I really work better in an intimate setting right now. But I'm open to that someday changing. But right now I'm working closely with people.
So if someone wanted to take those classes with you, you would come to Sebastopol to take those classes then?
Yes. That's right.
Yeah, I noticed earlier that one of our friends and co-authors, Tamis Renteria, was on here. Is she a friend of yours?
Tamis is a friend. Hello, Tamis. Yes.
And we'll also have Pamela Eakins, who's down at Half Moon Bay, who I think you and she would get along very well. Do you know her as well?
I took a class with Pamela once that she was teaching Brian Swim.
Yeah, and Laima is just up the road from you there at Laima Graham. So it's a very warm and rich area in the Sebastopol area. So if you are interested in taking classes with Teresa, get in touch with her, and she can tell you about coming up and taking the classes or staying. I don't know whether they're weekend or are they weekend classes? I think I saw that.
You're during the week.
During the week. So, okay. I just had a total brain loss. Where was I going with that? Raven, where was I going with that?
You were asking me about where she's teaching her classes, what's coming up next when her new books are coming out. And also, we want to know her website and how people can get in touch with her.
It's so good to have Raven.
So tell us how people can get in touch with you, Teresa.
So people can get in touch with me through both of my websites. One of them is ritualgoddess.com. Ritualgoddess.com. And that one has a blog that's fairly active. I blog, post up quite often about divining and the work I'm doing. And the other one is called the Strega and the Dreamer.com.
Okay.
So you can connect with me through those. My 2 new books should be out sometime next year. The one that's about the Amazon tree and priestess diviners through time will be out probably in the spring, and then the other tree book will be out in the summer.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know why, but I'm having a vision of a tree book which has pictures of trees. Is this book, the tree book, going to have pictures of trees?
Yeah, I would like each chapter that's about a tree to have the picture.
Okay. So just all of a sudden I'm seeing pictures of trees, so I wanted to find out if it was just me creating a tree book or if that was something that you were doing. Sometimes I can't tell the difference. I'm sorry. So if somebody would like to have you do a divination for them, for you, how should they get in touch with you?
They can also get in touch with me through my website for that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's most ideal to be able to come to my home and actually hold the stick with me. But if you can't, I can do a remote divination. And I would give you instructions on how to proceed with that if you contact me through my website.
Okay, so you prefer which one?
I always prefer everything. I always prefer in person, up close in person.
No, I mean the website, Ritual Goddess.
Oh, Ritual Goddess. Either, it doesn't matter. Either is a way to contact me.
Okay, yeah. Great. All right, so if you're interested in having a divination session with Teresa, get in touch with her through Ritual Goddess, and she'll set you up either in person or over the phone.
And tell us what people could conduct in a divination session.
Could you say that again?
What would people receive from you in a divination session?
Oh. What will they receive from me? When you come for a divination, the first thing that happens is that I just listen to whoever it is that came with you and what they have to say. And the way I like to describe that is they let me know what's pushing most urgently against you from the other world. So first I listen and I tell you what I'm seeing and who's here and what they would like. And the Daigoro tradition is very much based on ancestral work. So a lot of times ancestors will come and ask for help or an offering or just tell you something. But first I listen. And then if you have questions, there's a time at the end for you to ask your own questions. Typically people's questions get answered.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, apparently one of your relatives is on this. Well, Maria is over here, I see.
Hi, Maria.
So I just wanted to let you say hi. And so we've done well tonight. We're under the hour, and I want to really thank you for being here. It's been very interesting. I look forward. I'm going to get your books. I'll order them in a few minutes here. I look forward to reading them. I've always been fascinated by Crete. It was part of my bachelor's project was the influence of Egypt upon Crete. And boy, was that one a hard one to find whenever I was back in 1974 and there was no internet. So, you know, it's always interesting to have the different priestesses on here because every one of them is like a jewel, and they have different information. So, you know, we've got 35 of these now, and someone was just saying to me, he says he'd watched several of them. He says, you have an incredible body of work here. He says, I've never heard this information before. It's like it's this hidden thing that's been, the priestesses know about it, but nobody else does. It's not been shared. He says, you know, we hear a lot about goddesses and pagans and Wiccans, but we don't hear about the priestesses that hold this energy and bring this energy forth. So, you know, I said, yeah, I know. And that's part of the reason I'm doing the show, is because whether you are a woman who serves the divine, and that divine is Yahweh, Lilith, Isis, Baba Yaga, Kali, Buddha, it doesn't matter. In many ways, it's like when we were talking about the grandmothers, that there's this thread that runs through it, that the grandmothers don't care what background you're from, because in a way it's all of us are those who serve the divine, know that we are the hands of God here on earth. We are the eyes and the mouth. We are the ones that heal. We are the ones that care. We are the ones that take care of others. And we serve in many different ways, whether it's caring for the elderly or caring for the young or teaching or divining. Much of the tarot work that Raven does in many ways is divination. The shamanic journey work that I do, the work that Teresa does, we're basically opening that conduit so that the goddess within you and the goddess within us can communicate, so that we can let that information flow and help you rise up, because together we're so much better than the sum of our parts. That together, each of us individually has to sort of struggle and survive as best we can, but if we can come together and put our energies together, we do so much better, and we can rise up and we can make a difference in this world. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to support you in making a difference in this world. I want to thank you for being here tonight. Next week, Sharon Rose will be with us. Sharon is the producer and director of The Last Avatar, which is debuting last weekend for the first time in Boulder, Colorado. It's a new movie. She's also an author of the book called A Path of the Priestess. She's a dancer, a temple dancer, quite beautiful. Really wonderful. Been a good friend of mine for a number of years, and I look forward to having her on. And she's very original. And you know what? That's the thing I like about all the priestesses. They're all absolute originals. And Teresa, you have been a lovely original priestess for us to have on this evening. I want to thank you so much for being with us. And did you have any last words you wanted to say?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for this time. It was really delightful, and I really appreciate the opportunity. But also, I just want to thank you so much for what you just said at the end. It so beautifully captures what I believe as well. Working together is so important, and I just want to thank you for that.
Great, thank you. And Raven, once more, I want to thank you for being here. I know sometimes when you come home from your job, it's hard. She has a job, you know, one of those things where you go to and people expect you to be there on time and all that stuff. I haven't had one in 37 years, but I understand they're quite interesting. You know, I really appreciate you being here and lending your energy and asking questions and being my support and sometimes being my memory as you were tonight whenever everything totally escaped me.
It's my pleasure to enjoy. Gloria.
As far as divination goes, Catherine Ravenwood is without a doubt one of the world's best tarot readers. I swear to it, and I've had my tarot cards read by many different people. She's still #1 in my book. Mm-hmm. And Catherine, Raven, how would you like people to get in touch with you?
They can reach me through my email, the letter K, ravenwood@yahoo.com, or my website is Catherine, that's Kathryn, ravenwood.com.
Thank you so much. And thank all of you who will be listening to this in the future on YouTube. Please add your comments to the video and like it if you like it. I invite you to join a Gathering of Priestesses, which is a group on Facebook. You do have to ask to join, and I will look at your profile. And then we'll add you to the group. It's been an interesting year this year, so let's continue. Let's keep it rolling. Next week we'll listen to Sharon Rose and what she has to say, and about her new movie, about her new program, and about her incredible new jewelry. You've got to look at her jewelry. It's called Shasta Style, and it's jewelry made with feathers, and it's gorgeous. I'm already lusting after several pieces. If only I had as much money as I have lust. So thank you again for being here tonight. And I release you all, and I wish you the best of blessings for this week. And please drive carefully, be good, and be sweet, as my grandma always used to say. Good night.
Good night.